What if the reason some men over 60 cut everyone off has nothing to do with bitterness, weakness, or giving up, and everything to do with a psychological shift most people never talk about? What if what looks like isolation on the outside is actually the final stage of a pattern that started decades earlier? And what if misunderstanding this pattern is quietly harming millions of senior men in America right now? Here's the mystery. Families often say, "He changed." Friends say, "He just disappeared." Doctors label it depression or aging. But none of those explanations fully answer why some older men intentionally reduce contact, stop explaining themselves, and walk away from relationships they once valued. Something important is missing from the conversation. To find it, we have to follow the timeline, because this behavior does not start at 60 or 70. It is the result of cause and effect stretching across an entire adult life. Let's begin with the origins of the issue in early adulthood. In their 20s and 30s, many men in the United States are conditioned to define their worth through function. Be useful, be reliable, be strong. Psychological research going back to mid-20th century masculinity studies shows that men are rewarded for self-control, emotional restraint, and problem-solving, not emotional expression. The cause seems harmless. Society praises independence. The effect stays invisible. Men learn early that asking for help feels risky. Vulnerability feels optional. Relationships become roles: provider, fixer, protector. Emotional connection exists, but it is often secondary to responsibility. This matters later. Now we move into the changes that start quietly in the 40s. By midlife, cracks appear. Careers plateau or end. Physical energy declines. Family roles shift. Children grow up. Parents age or die. According to American Psychological Association data, men in their 40s and 50s experience rising stress levels, but are far less likely than women to seek emotional support. The cause is internalized pressure. The effect is emotional compression. Instead of processing loss, men compartmentalize it. They push forward. This works for a while. But unresolved emotion does not disappear. It accumulates. Here's the twist most people miss. Emotional suppression does not make men stronger with age. It makes them quieter, less expressive, more selective. Now comes the shift after 70 that most people ignore. After 70, identity erosion accelerates. Work is gone. Physical capability changes. Social circles shrink due to illness or death. According to U.S. Census data, older men are significantly more likely than women to live alone and less likely to maintain frequent social contact. This is where the psychology changes. Older men begin to evaluate relationships differently, not based on obligation, but on emotional cost. Conversations that once felt tolerable now feel draining. Social rituals feel performative. Small talk feels pointless. This is not always depression. It is often cognitive reprioritization. Aging research shows that as people perceive time as limited, they become more selective about how they spend emotional energy. This is called socio-emotional selectivity theory, first developed by psychologist Laura Carstensen. The cause is time awareness. The effect is social narrowing. But for men who never learned how to maintain emotionally nourishing connections, narrowing can turn into cutting off. Now we reach the breaking point where the behavior becomes visible. This often happens after a specific trigger: retirement, a health scare, the death of a spouse or close friend, a family conflict that feels like the final straw. The man stops calling back, stops attending gatherings, stops explaining himself. From the outside, it looks sudden. From the inside, it feels overdue. Here's where the danger lies. American health surveys show that social isolation in older men is associated with higher rates of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and early mortality. Men who report low social integration have significantly shorter life expectancy compared to socially connected peers. The cause is withdrawal. The effect is systemic decline. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Many men who cut people off feel relief at first. relief from expectations, from judgment, from emotional labor they never learned to manage. This short-term relief masks long-term risk. Now let's look at the fallout. Health fallout shows up as increased inflammation, sleep disruption, and faster cognitive decline. Money fallout can appear when isolation leads to poor decision-making or lack of advocacy during medical or financial events. Lifestyle fallout is quieter, but profound. Days lose structure, purpose fades, motivation drops. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show that men with limited social engagement are less likely to adhere to medical advice and more likely to experience rapid functional decline after illness. So what do seniors try to do to fix this? They rely on failed fixes. One failed fix is forced socialization. Family members push gatherings without addressing emotional safety. This backfires. Another failed fix is labeling the behavior as stubbornness. This increases shame and further withdrawal. A third failed fix is medicalizing the issue without addressing identity loss. Medication alone cannot replace meaning. Now let's reveal the missing piece. Many senior men are cutting people off because they hate connection. They are cutting people off because they do not know how to renegotiate connection without the roles that once defined them. They were valued for what they did. Now they fear being seen for who they are. This fear is rarely spoken, but it explains the pattern repeating across millions of American households. So, what can be done today? Here are 3 direct actions people over 60 can apply right now. First, rebuild connection around shared activity, not forced emotion. Walking, projects, learning. Many men reconnect more easily through doing than talking. Second, practice controlled vulnerability, one honest sentence at a time. You don't have to explain your whole life, just enough to stay human. Third, protect autonomy while allowing access. You can choose when and how you connect without disappearing completely. Here is the clear warning based on evidence. Chronic social isolation after 60 increases mortality risk at levels comparable to smoking and obesity. Cutting everyone off feels protective, but it quietly accelerates decline. And here is the open thought to sit with until the next video. If connection does not have to look like the past, what might it look like now? If this helped you understand yourself or someone you love, do like, leave a comment, and share this with someone who may be misreading silence as strength. Subscribe now for the next chapter, where we explore why some seniors suddenly lose interest in everything they once loved and what it really means.